Welcome in, everybody, to this Saturday edition of the Pack-A-Day podcast. You know me, I'm Andy Herman. Thanks so much for taking some time out of your day to join me here on YouTube. I'm going to be going over the injury report today, and I think it's always so interesting to run down the injury report, both for the Packers and their opponent, because so much of the NFL is this war of attrition and who's in, who's out, who's going to play, who's not, and it can really change, the entire complexion of a game. You don't have to go back too far, just going back to that San Francisco 49ers game and all the injuries that San Francisco had, and a few key injuries here or there can completely change the complexion of a game. So let's start with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I think, of course, everyone knows this already, but Gardner Minshew officially ruled out for the game. Jake Luton will be the quarterback for the Jaguars, and then I think kind of the big one, Laviska Shenault, who was kind of questionable whether or not he'd play all week. He was also ruled out in this game, so I know Marcus Eversole, well, I don't know if he's going to be happy because I know he's a big Laviska Shenault guy, but I guess he can't, beat up on the Packers, but I guess he doesn't get to see him play, so I'll have to ask Marcus what he thinks about that. But the other, one of kind of interest is Josh Jones, who's going to be questionable in this game. Not gonna lie, I kind of want Josh Jones to play. I feel like, Green Bay had, or the other teams were the beneficiary of Josh Jones being on the field when Green Bay had Josh Jones, and I feel like it's only fair that now that he's on another team, Green Bay should be able to get to play against him as well. Suppose I should be careful what I wish for. He'll probably play and have 2 interceptions and a, fumble recovery for a touchdown or something. But either way, we'd love to see Josh Jones back out on the field at Lambeau Field in one capacity or the other. So those are kind of the big ones. For Green Bay, there's literally so much to break down here because you have players that have been announced out for the year. You have players on the COVID list. You have players that are almost back from the injured reserve list. And then you have your normal injury report. So let's start off with the kind of breaking news of the day, which you all know by now, is that John Lovett was diagnosed with a torn ACL and will be out for the remainder of the year. It's kind of crazy that, of the 3 players who are out for the year, 2 of them were that, hybrid fullback, H-back, tight end, sort of position with Josiah DeGuara, and now his replacement really in John Lovett. I think Lovett's big loss really is going to be on special teams. He had a really nice tackle just a couple weeks ago on special teams, and I think that's definitely an area where he really is, started to find his groove. He didn't play that many snaps on offense, if we're being honest, and even a few of those were those garbage time handoffs last week against San Francisco. And frankly, he hasn't been very good as a fullback. He's really struggled just with kind of the basics of the position. He's still learning. He's still a former quarterback turned tight end, now turned H-back, fullback. All that versatility that we heard about, we haven't really seen any of that. He just kind of looks like I don't mean to, pounce on the guy when he's down, but he kind of just seems like a below average fullback if we're being kind of real here for a second. So, I wish him the best of luck. I want him to recover quickly. And like I said, he was really making a name for himself on special teams, but I think Green Bay is going to be able to survive this injury from an offensive standpoint, although it is a little bit interesting this week, which I'll get into more in just a moment. So that does it for the player who's likely to go on IR on Saturday as Green Bay makes some corresponding moves. Let's go over next the COVID list. So Chris Barnes, A.J. Dillon still out at this time on the COVID list. So they are, unless they get activated on Saturday, we'll see. As of this point, they are going to be out for that game as well. And I think it's probably more likely than not that both of those players are out. So then you have also the players who are on injured reserve who may or may not be coming back. Christian Kirksey and Alan Lazard are the 2. Based off of Matt LaFleur's comments, if I'm kind of reading between the lines a little bit, it seems like there's a legitimate chance that Christian Kirksey may be back for this game. It sounds like he's kind of questionable, more of a game time decision, but it sounds like there's a legitimate chance that he could play with, Chris Barnes being out. That could definitely be something that helps this defense out. And then on the flip side, it's leaning towards, and it's sounding like Alan Lazard will not be ready for this week. Hopefully he can be ready for Indianapolis in about 8 days from now. But as of now, it looks like Kirksey may have a chance, and it looks like Alan Lazard probably will not play on Sunday. So then let's go through the injury report. We already know that John Lovett's out. He's not technically on IR yet, so they still have to put an injury designation on him. He is out. And then Jair Alexander is doubtful. He was seen at practice on Friday, however, more of just kind of some of the stretching and the jog-throughs and things like that. It doesn't sound like he did any of the team activities. I would be beyond shocked if Jair Alexander played in this game, especially with how cautious they've been, especially with a concussion. I would expect that they will be extra cautious with Jair, and again, hope to have him back against Indianapolis in 8 days from now. All right, that leaves us with the questionables, and I think you have to kind of break down these always into two different groups, the questionable players that didn't practice and the questionable players that did practice. Only one that didn't, and that's Robert Tonyan. So going back to John Lovett being out, we already know Josiah DeGuara's on IR, John Lovett's going to be on IR. Now you have Robert Tonyan, who's potentially out in this game. That could leave you with just Mercedes Lewis and Jace Sternberger. So it'll be interesting to see how they navigate those waters. And I'm going to go over that more in just a moment as well. And then the questionables that have practiced in some capacity throughout the week, Kevin King. However, we know they've been super cautious with these injuries, and it wouldn't shock me, although I'm sure they would love to have him back, especially if Jair Alexander's going to be out. Will Redmond, Vernon Scott, Darius Shepard, Equinemius St. Brown, and Rick Wagner. All questionable, all practiced in some capacity, so that's a good sign. Hopefully a lot of those players are going to be able to go, but still going to be a probably somewhat of a game time decision come Sunday to see how each of those players are healthy. One really good bit of news is that David Bakhtiari is completely off the injury list, so he is good to go. You would assume that would, especially with Rick Wagner being questionable for this game, that would put obviously Bakhtiari back at left tackle, and then Billy Turner back starting at right tackle would be the expectation, with Lindsley at center, Lucas Patrick at right guard, and Elton Jenkins at left guard. Really their intended starting lineup, save for I guess maybe Lucas Patrick over Lane Taylor, who went out in the first game of the year. But at this point, their intended starting lineup. So that would be great to get all those guys back healthy and on the same page once again, although the offensive line's done great regardless of who's been in there. But let's look at this kind of taking a step back and looking at it from a position by position standpoint. There's a lot of groups that have multiple injuries that Green Bay's going to have to navigate in some capacity. First of all, at wide receiver, Equinemius St. Brown and Darius Shepard are both questionable, and it looks like Allen Lazard's not able to come back. That could lead you with just Devontae Adams, MVS and Malik Taylor, and then potentially Tyler Ervin in that role as a kind of a slot gadget player. You would expect, maybe either Seth Roberts, Reggie Begelton, or Juwan Winfrey to get a call up if that's the case, if both EQ and Shepard aren't able to go, and if, as we expect, Allen Lazard's not able to be called back up from the injured list. So that's position one that is going to have to take a look at. Now, can they get by with just those three? Yeah, I think Adams, MVS, and Malik Taylor can mostly hold it down with probably bringing, probably Reggie Begelton up from the practice squad would be my guess. He's been in camp with the team the longest, knows the system the longest, so that'd be my guess, but we'll see what moves they make there. The next group, I already mentioned, that tight end group, you've potentially got only Mercedes Lewis and Jace Sternberger in this game. We know Lovett can't play. We know DeGuara can't play. And now Robert Tonyan questionable and didn't practice on Friday, which is never a good sign. So they could go a couple different directions here. Dominique Daphne is a tight end fullback, H-back type player. A little bit different mold than like a John Lovett, probably more H-back slash, kind of player you can split out wide and do a couple different things. But he is more than capable of, kind of filling in that sort of flex type role. And then Dax Shepard is a player who just, got picked up on the practice squad as well. Shepard's actually had NFL experience and played in the NFL as a tight end, has played on special teams, so they could definitely go in that direction as well. If they just have the two and Robert Tonyan can't go, I would definitely expect at minimum one of those players, if not both, to potentially be active for this game. The next is defensive back, and I'll start at corner. You could have a situation if Jair's not able to go and if Kevin King's not able to go, and let's just put safety in this as well. You might not have Will Redmond or Vernon Scott as well. This is a massively banged up secondary. You could be left with just Josh Jackson, Chandon Sullivan, and Kadar Hallman at corner, and then Adrian Amos, Darnell Savage, and Raven Green at safety. And we know that they like to use Raven Green in that hybrid linebacker role as well, which really kind of makes things interesting. Green Bay does have some options. In fact, they protected all 3 of their defensive backs that were on their practice squad so that no other teams could poach those players. Henry Black, the safety, I would expect him to get a call up again. Kavarie Russell, cornerback, I would expect him to potentially get a call up, and then Stanford Samuels as well. So all of those players could be in play, especially if King and Alexander, Will Redmond, and Vernon Scott are all unable to go. It's definitely going to put some pressure on the Packers in their secondary. Most importantly, with all those injuries and players in and players out, keep a very close eye on special teams, because everything, from a special team standpoint, a lot of those core special teams players now called up to the active roster, they get some of their special teams duties taken away, and now all of a sudden it's guys like Dax Shepard or Kavarie Russell or Henry Black or Stanford Samuels, Reggie Begelton, those sort of players who are now your core special teams players, and that can certainly make things very complicated. We already saw earlier this year when Dexter Williams got called up, his primary goal was special teams. He allowed the blocked punt, which was potentially a major play in that game. So those sort of things are the things that can happen when you've got a lot of random players up and really needed on special teams. That's going to do it for me. I'm going to be breaking down this game tomorrow in greater detail, always going over my 3 keys to the game. And I think one of them is going to be, getting over these injuries. And then I think the weather is going to be a major factor as well, which I'll go into more detail tomorrow. I'd be remiss, though, without closing out today by, thinking about Paul Hornung, passing away. Rest in peace to one of the absolute great Packer legends. I'm not going to pretend like I got to see Paul Hornung play. I certainly did not, but every story, every highlight, every video that you see, the stories are beyond amazing that you hear about Paul Hornung, both on and off the field. Ben Fennell posted a really amazing scouting report that if you haven't checked out yet, just take some time out of your day and go find that scouting report, because it's absolutely incredible. But rest in peace to one of the all-time Packers greats. And, Green Bay lost a great one, and we're definitely going to be thinking about Paul. And may he rest in peace as one of the all-time great Green Bay Packers. That does it for me. Thanks for listening. And until tomorrow, and as always, go Pack Go.